Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 18th of November 2018 and the 9th of Hatur 17:35 am. I'm David Nada. In today's headlines, Melbourne attack, police say suspect was inspired by ISIS but had no direct contact. Israeli Defense Minister resigns protesting over Gaza ceasefire. Syrian Kurds resume push to rid ISIS from Syria. Trudeau reveals Canada has heard Khashoggi recordings. Floods in Jordan kill at least 13 people. Blood pressure drug recalls increase again. Christian Pulisic says there's no reason the USA can't win the World Cup. But first to Australia, where last Friday a man stabbed 3 people after his pickup truck burst into flames in a Melbourne street. Known to authorities for his radical views, Australian police have confirmed the man was inspired by ISIS, despite having no direct contact. Hassan Khalid Shire Ali has had his passport cancelled in 2015 when authorities found he had plans to travel to Syria. Australian Federal Police Commissioner Ian McCartney said Shire Ali was known to the Victorian Joint Terrorism Team but was not being monitored. ISIS had claimed responsibility for the knife attack through its media wing, Amaq. McCartney said, "The event for us is a reality check. Even with the fall of the caliphate in the conflict zone, the threat continues to be real. Obviously, in terms of how and where, why and when he moved along from the path from radicalization to basically putting in place those actions will be a key focus of the investigation." Last Friday's attack, which is being treated as an act of terrorism, began when the attacker's vehicle burst into flames and the man emerged and engaged with members of the public in a busy downtown street. The horrifying scene was over in a matter of minutes after police shot the attacker, who died after being rushed to the hospital under police guard. Only after he was shot did police realise that 3 members of the public had been stabbed. One man died later in hospital. He was identified by local media as Sisto Malapisma, the co-owner of popular Italian restaurant in Melbourne. To Israel now, where the country's defense minister Avigdor Lieberman announced his resignation last Wednesday. He also called for early elections because of his opposition to a ceasefire deal between Israel and Gaza, which brought to end the worst fighting since 2014 war. Calling the ceasefire giving in to terror, the hardline leader of the right-wing Israel Beitenu party said in the afternoon news conference in Jerusalem, "We are buying quiet for a short time at a very high price for long-term security. It is not a secret that there were in the past months differences of opinion between me and the Prime Minister." Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the ceasefire, saying, "A leader does the right thing, even if it is difficult. A leader sometimes has to stand and face criticism when there are things which are sensitive under wraps that can't be shared with Israeli citizens." Lieberman doesn't have enough seats in Netanyahu's coalition to bring down the government on his own and force early elections. He only holds 5 seats of 66, leaving Netanyahu with a bare minimum coalition of 61. To Syria now, where Kurdish forces are resuming the final phase of operations against ISIS, as the terrorist group is pushed back into its last remaining slivers of territory. The latest Kurdish push against ISIS follows a lengthy and contentious standoff with Turkish forces. Turkey, a NATO member, considers the Syrian Kurds the US coalition's main ally in the fight against ISIS, a terrorist group. Clashes between the Turkish military and the Syrian Kurds, also known as the Syrian Defense Forces, when allied with Syrian Arab fighters, have intermittently plagued and delayed the final operations against ISIS. The most recent suspension occurred on November the 1st, but operations restarted last Sunday. The SDF said operations resumed after positive calls from our allies to de-escalate and focus the efforts on defeating ISIS, as it would contribute to stabilization of the area and the benefit of all parties. The US has long been mediating between Ankara and the SDF to lessen tension to the point where the SDF can focus on ISIS. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said agents in his country have listened to audio recordings related to Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post columnist who was killed in Saudi consulate in Istanbul last month. Turkey has claimed for weeks to have audio evidence that exposes how the Saudi journalist was killed on October the 2nd as he visited the consulate to obtain papers for his upcoming marriage. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said last Saturday that his country had shared the recordings with Saudi Arabia, the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany and France. While in Paris for World War I commemorations, Trudeau confirmed to reporters that Canadian agents had heard the recordings, but that he himself had not. He said, "We continue to be engaged with our allies on the investigation into accountability for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and we are in discussions with our like-minded allies to the next steps towards Saudi Arabia." Confusion has swirled over which countries have and haven't listened to the recordings, and Turkish officials have said little about what they might contain. US President Donald Trump has called the episode a total fiasco, but has faced sharp criticism for being lax on the kingdom over Khashoggi's killing. showing reluctance to impose sanctions on the Saudis over the journalist's death. To Jordan now, where at least 13 people, including 2 young girls, were killed as flash floodings engulfed multiple cities last Friday, according to government officials. Heavy downpours triggered the floods, forcing more than 3,500 international and domestic tourists to be evacuated from the tourist city of Petra. Ongoing rainfall in the Dabar region of southern Jordan also led to the closure of the desert highway in both directions. Vehicles were left stranded as the highway flooded and traffic trapped those attempting to leave. In the Malai district of the Madaba Governorate, where a young girl was killed when her family's car was swept away by floodwaters, rescue teams and divers were on the scene searching for other missing people. Workers were also trying to restore electricity to communities where rainfall caused generators to malfunction, resulting in blackouts. According to Jumana Gomanai, spokesman for the Jordan's Minister of State for Media and Affairs and Communications, rescue operations continue across Jordan, with 60 people rescued and 9 transferred to Al Nadim Hospital in Madaba. Authorities have also deployed a drone to search flooded areas for missing people and gauge damage caused by the storm. As search and rescue operations continue, the public is advised to exercise extreme caution to deal with weather conditions in a very serious manner. In health news, the US Food and Drug Administration says another heart medicine is being voluntarily recalled after tests showed that it was tainted with a potential cancer-causing chemical. The new recall of losartan potassium hydrochloride is sold by the company Sandoz and is used to manage high blood pressure. The voluntary recall only involves the 100 mg by 25 mg tablets and does not involve the other versions of the drug, sometimes sold under the brand name Hyzar. If you currently take those tablets, look on the bottle for the lot number. If it has the lot number JB8912, then you have those recalled pills. The drug is being recalled because the active ingredient has tested positive for N-nitrothiamine, or NDR, a suspected human and animal carcinogen that is used in gasoline as a stabilizer for industry materials and as a lubricant additive. If your drug is on the recall list, the FDA suggests taking it until your doctor or pharmacist provides a replacement. And in sport, Christian Pulisic is considered one of the most exciting prospects in world football and has become a beacon of hope for the United States national team. Despite his tender age, the 20-year-old Borussia Dortmund star is one of the most experienced players in the current national squad, and he believes fans should be excited about the side's future. In a recent interview, he said, "Seeing a lot of younger guys coming through the system, I don't think there is any reason why we shouldn't be a successful team in the coming years." The USA men's team doesn't have the best record when it comes to international competitions. The country failed to qualify for the 2018 World Cup in Russia, and its best finish came in 1930 when it reached the semi-finals. But there have been signs of a revival. They drew 1-1 with world champions France in June, a performance that hinted that the team's potential could be fulfilled. With this being the case, Pulisic sees no reason why the USA can't win the World Cup in his lifetime. He said, "With the talent we have now, and if we continue to grow as a sport in the country, there is no reason that we can't make a good run in a World Cup one day." And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bullet again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm David Nada, and from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia, have a good night and God bless.